Everybody, this is Enlightened Masculinity Podcast, Wednesday episode, which means it's streamed to IMC TV YouTube. So you can go check out the IMC TV YouTube. There's actually like 20 of them, but you'll see our logo there and you'll know it's us because I'll be there. And there's like 12 or 14 other shows streamed there. So shout out to IMC TV, IMC Nation. I'm captain of IMC Nation, broadcasting to you from IMC Base 1, where we have 5 bases currently. And, you know, it's been about 2.5, 3 years in the making, going from 1 to 2 to 3, 4, 5, and there's new ones in the works. Hold on, I'm fixing this inset right here. I'm Yogi Chris, PhD, founder of Ninth Limb Yoga, and captain of IMC. Hold on. Sometimes you think you put out the inset, it doesn't really fully go out, and later you're like, why am I suffocating on smoke here? It's because the inset kept going. Okay, and I've labeled this episode, you know, there were a few directions I could go in, and I'm thinking about starting at the end, and how do I want the effect to be? How do I want you all to leave this recording or this streaming? If you're watching the recording, how do I want you to leave the recording? The end result. I begin at the end. How do I want it to be? Because I have probably some psychedelic opinion that from any starting place on earth, if within the realm of physical, you know, possibilities, like you can't just teleport like that just because you want to, maybe on some highest physical plane of intelligence you can, maybe that's all it takes, but I don't see anybody doing it. I only hear stories about it. So I'm saying like fly a plane, combustion engine, you know, cell phone. What's the possibilities that we have available to us now? And you take a human and their existence is like that, and you take me and I'm like this, and if I want another experience and it's humanly possible to have that experience, meaning some human on earth is having that experience, and it's not like from alien or you could call it magic, but like it's from physical tangible steps that they took, I can take those steps. Starting from wherever I am, I can get there. There's an end available to me in this lifetime. I believe actually in the universe of possibilities that it may only be 1 out of 7 trillion possibilities, and it's practically virtually impossible to find that needle in a haystack, but there is a needle in that haystack. And it's not just a mechanical trial and error finding the needle in the haystack, the pin in the haystack. It's a quantum mental exercise, a mental searching and discovery of all the possibilities, finding the route that gets you the results you want. And so we start at the end. How do I want it to be? Because I mean, where am I going if I don't know where I want it to be? So we start with that. Then, you know, I read books in the morning. I have a certain habit that I pretty much every day, every morning when I finish reading, I really, really want to keep reading. And it's a little bit torturous. I'm like, man, I just want to keep reading these books. Like, I don't know when I would burn out. Maybe 5 more minutes, maybe 5 more hours. But every day I want to read more, and I like having that hunger still in me. And each day versus burning out. I don't want to have enough of it and then I don't want to do it anymore. So I went through a bunch of books today, and I don't read much. I read until I have realization, until there's a good, or I've gone enough. And if I haven't had realization because you know, maybe the reading just didn't do that for me, then I still move on, because there's a lot of subjects. No one subject seems to do it for me, because my day is composed of many things. I'm not just doing ethics. I'm not just doing evolutionary psychology and the relating with women, basically. I'm not just, you know, I mean, in a way, the one that I'm doing the most of is Scientology 88008, which is all about using your imagination. But I'm not actually doing that all day because maybe I haven't had that mastery of it. Like Stoicism, I have the Stoic book there. I'm not actually, but I am and I'm not. Like I aim to be the Stoic. I'm just not aiming to focus solely on being a Stoic all day, because there are other things to be focused on. Win friends and influence people, the Dhammapada, you know, Buddhism, like so many things from outer space to you, man. So what I did was kind of take some notes, just some, after the fact, after reading, I took 10 seconds to write down what I learned, it's so interesting because it's like, I feel like that's almost like a school assignment. That's what they did in public school. Like, what did you learn from this? Like, I actually like remembering because I'm actually liking what I'm reading. It's by choice. They would never assign any of these books in public school. If they did, man, we'd be different adults, because these are great books. That's a shame. Maybe Win Friends and Influence People they talked about, but whatever. So then I was going to go through some of these notes. And then when I'm looking at them, I'm like, man, they go over, and it's only like, one long sentence of like 6 or 7 different notes. But it's like, these are all over the place. Like, it's not going to be a cohesive thing for you. I can tell it to you, and I think it would be interesting. But as far as like keeping it zoomed in on a topic, and I called this episode Lightness and Carefree. I could call it Lighthearted and Carefree. And focusing on the end, the effect, and what I would want you to go forward with your day. Well, I want to convey with sincerity that people don't seem to be okay out there. I haven't really stepped out of my house today. So it's 9 a.m. here in California, and wake up at 5:45, see my cold shower video that I did like in the cold shower this morning, 5:45. And a whole bunch of processes throughout the morning, and ending with a little bit of a joint and some of this green tea to make an episode better for you. And then here we are. So I haven't stepped out, but I do go out each day. Today I'll go to jujitsu, and that might actually be the only time I get out today. Maybe I'll go to the grocery store afterwards, and that's fine. I'll be communicating with probably 40 to 75 people today. Yeah, roughly. I mean, I have a few staff meetings that I'll run, a few mastermind meetings that I'm a part of. And so I can say, though, when you look out at the world and the people in it and how they're moving, they're not okay. They're introverted. They're in their head as they're walking around, and they're not having a good time in their head. You can see on their face, they have stress about what they're thinking about. They're not enjoying it. And that's a habit. They've made a habit out of that for years and years. This process, how we live, is, like I was saying, imagination, so important. It's taking control of these automatic, just the autopilot mind. I used to say autopilot all the time. Just automatic thinking systems. Like in yoga, you would say the yoga is the stopping of the systems of the mind. The systems are the habits of thinking, down to the deepest levels of muscle patterns, how you use your muscles. That's a system of thinking that you've worked out. You're just not thinking so much, you're not thinking about it that it's unconscious. It's in your subconscious. But you had to coordinate and figure it out in the beginning. In the beginning, you were just flailing, didn't have any coordination. You had to like make these thoughts and coordinations internally with the muscles. These are systems. So people, they're just not doing okay, but there's a way of interacting with them, knowing that they're not okay, but that they could be okay. It's in them. I would also not be okay without the technology of all the books I read and the mentors I've had and the lifestyle that I live. I mean, put me in someone else's lifestyle and their context and have me live it, and eventually I'll have a very similar state of mind as they do. Like my mind isn't that different from your mind. And in fact, it's made of the exact same elements, same material, same stuff. But it's patterned and programmed differently, upbringing, and then what I do now to overhaul that and excavate and till the ground and take the weeds and the rocks out until one day I have a perfect soil for my garden that's just so nutrient rich, and it's the perfect composition, and it's the perfect texture. It's not clay and matte and too compact, or it's too loose where like roots can't take hold. Like it's, and then one day you see my garden and you have a plot over there, and that's your plot. Your plot is terrible. It's got all these weeds and it's rocky and it's all compact and devoid of certain things, and who knows, muddy. And you want my garden, but it's like, you got to put in the work, till it. I'll show you how. Here's the technology, versus you wouldn't even know what to do. That's like not having any books or philosophy or mentors or whatever. But here's some philosophy. Here's some mentors. Here's some books. Here's some techniques for tilling the ground and weeding. It's a concept of weeding. Some plants you want, some plants you don't want. Some thoughts you want, some thoughts you don't want. Tilling the ground. Let's have some exercise. You got to dig up the mind. Let's put yourself in charged or difficult situations like sales, or relationships. That's going to till up the ground. And if your strategy is too weak, it may break the tiller. The ground is too hard. Your mind is too stubborn. But with patience, persistence, the right techniques, you can make the perfect garden for your existence. And that's all we can really hope for here. What are you going to do? What are you going to do on the outside of you without tilling the mind inside of you and making it the perfect ecosystem and garden and farm for what you want to grow in this life? And what do you want to grow? Well, focus on the end. Start at the end. Begin at the end. And you can think about the physical objects and possessions and, you know, I want this much money and this kind of plane and this kind of vehicle and this and that. Is wear these kind of clothes and look like this or that. Okay, that's, I mean, you're already a level above normal people that aren't even aware. They can just like future cast. They can send their mind and consciousness way into the future and already start manipulating the quantum field and the electrons and the bosons and all that, and creating a void for me to fall into, to create a magnet for me to pull towards. With my mind, I go to a future time travel and do that and create a honing device or a beacon or a lighthouse for me to go towards. But how strongly is that? How strong is that magnet going to be? How bright is the lighthouse? So the more we can engage our senses and vividly, accurately, sharply imagine and create that end and pull us towards it, or just guide us towards it. So many ways of thinking about it. Well, that's pretty important. So what kind of life do you want to have? You start at the end, and what's that experience like? And what's the experience of other people around you? And it takes time. You got to till the ground, things got to grow, and then you got to pull them up, and more things got to grow. And, you know, there'll be so many seeds in the ground. You pull up the weeds. This is a good analogy. I feel like Divine is going to appreciate this one if she's still watching. You know, when you till up the ground, let's say there's a bunch of weeds. Freedom Ranger's going to like this too. He's on. So let's say you got a bunch of weeds and you pull them all up, and the ground, it looks like, I mean, I don't know how much you've done to the ground, but you pulled up all the weeds. So now it's like bare of all undesirables. Okay. If you do nothing else, come back, more weeds have grown. If you till the ground, which means like dig it up and turn it over so that all the plants get buried over, and you come back, still more weeds will grow. You could pull them all up and still more weeds will grow. Why? Because there's seeds all throughout the soil. There's pollen and all sorts of weed, DNA, growth material in the seeds and the pods and whatever that are throughout the soil, the depth of the soil. They weren't just at the surface. So even though you do good with your day and your discipline and you focus on the end results that you want and you work towards those, Instagram cut out, and you work towards those ends, still weeds will grow, still obstacles will come, internal obstacles, and you got to keep weeding them. But I'm telling you, keep going. The idea of an ideal, pristine mind, perfect, may not be the most attainable while you're in society on this prison planet with the agenda of, I mean, you don't even have to watch the media. The media is reflected in the faces of all the people who watch the media. And then the people who interact with those people karmically, there's a transference of all the worry, doubt, concern, fear, anxiety, all the shit that people who watch media, that's going to be reflected on other people that interact with people who watch media, and so on and so forth. It will ripple through society. If you interact with people, you're interacting with the media. And that's just the media. You're interacting with Disney, you're interacting with pro sports, gladiator games, you're interacting with political bullshit. You're interacting with all the bullshit of the planet by interacting with the people of the planet. Unless you're going to go live in a cave in the high Himalayas and not interact with people. And then I just wonder what you're really going to do with that. And since I'm not there, the people that are there can exercise that. I'm here, I'm going to clean up my environment where I am. because I'm not going to keep looking for the perfect garden. I'm going to make my garden as perfect as can be. And that's going to affect all the people around me. They'll make better gardens. I'll have excess fruits and vegetables I can give, and it'll just be better for right around where I am. I don't have to expend all of my energy going and finding a better garden. So lighthearted and carefree, when I look into the faces, when I see and hear how they communicate, which comes all the way from how they're dressed, their walk, their movement, and then of course how they carry their face and all the modes of communication. And I'm seeing a lot of baggage be carried and a lot of mundane thinking, and I slip into it myself. My recognition of it is me knowing it in myself. That when I'm thinking about my taxes or this responsibility or this thing that I don't want to do, or I'm hungry or a little sore or blah, 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 complaints, just dude, such a habit. If you're on this planet, it's just going to be reflected onto you. You're going to be in an ocean. Now, how to be clean in a dirty water? But, the water is a mental water. And their minds, the minds of the planet, the minds of the people around you, don't have to infiltrate your mind if you don't let it. But then how to interact with all these other minds without enmeshing, without exchanging these energies that do infiltrate your mind. Okay, it's this balance. There's going to be some intermingling. There's going to be some influence. The more mastery you have of your own mind, awareness of depths of consciousness, of depths of what you're experiencing, you're feeling, more on the surface versus more deep, superficial conversation versus deep conversation, how deeply you are feeling something versus how surface it is, looking for causes and effects, because you have cause in every effect you're experiencing. You might not be the total cause, but you have some cause. And gradually tilling the habits of your life, tilling the habits of your mind, so that you find yourself in a position like Freedom Rangers living at base 2. That's like a position that he's in. Wow, I can imagine traveling the country, staying out of hotels and Airbnbs, not having the space or the freedom to have a backyard, a front yard, a garage, a workout place, upstairs, downstairs, bathroom. You're free to reign. It's your castle that you share with other kings or the princes or whatever you want to think of it as, or the warriors, versus living at parents or living out of this establishment or whatever. And there's an inhibition of your movement and your mind and your communication. And so now spread and experience the space. Wow, what an experience of life that adults don't have. They have to live in a frat house or a dormitory to have some semblance of that, but then they lack etiquette, they lack respect, they lack awareness, and they're like animals that just got let out of a cage and they don't know what to do, but they're going to make some mistakes because they're not aware of the viper is venomous, or the cliff they shouldn't jump off of, or the fire is hot, or don't go near the human with a gun. They'll take unnecessary risks or whatever. And we go through that phase. I mean, I'm 36. I've taken so many unnecessary risks that maybe were necessary because here I am and I'm living that good life, just like I'm saying about Ranger, maybe even better, just because I'm a little further along. And there's an aspiration, and that's what, the transfer, we transfer as men, we transfer this down the line to the men that would listen, that would look, that can see, perceive. We get through to them without investing too much in that individual, because it's not about that individual, but it is about saving the planet. And it's going to start and end with individuals that spread it. Just like the media is spread through this karma interaction, so is goodness, so is philosophy. It can be spread directly, like I tell you, take a cold shower when you wake up. There, I gave you something discreet, a definite thing to do. But then I can also take my cold shower, have all the good feelings, be bright and lighthearted, and interact with you. And there's a transference of my habits to you through this vibe of communication. And if it's really inspiring and you really like the effects it creates on you, and then you may ask some questions. Dude, how are you so lighthearted? Or how do you feel so good all the time? And so it's our duty to transfer this in a way that they get, if they want to get it, and to let go of the people that don't want to get it or don't seem like they want to get it, because that's just holding us back from helping the people that do want to get it, that could get it. But then you may feel bad because it's like, man, did I just give up on that guy just because I didn't know how to talk to him? That's true. You evolve and you'll be able to help more people. You also get clear on the people that, you know, are not looky-loos. They want to be helped. Because this life, I mean, it's an easy analogy. It's easy to see. Maybe you live by yourself as a man. There's going to be so many habits that you kind of develop just being by yourself like that, that is not going to be so conducive to the social experience, to this cool factor that makes people look up to you, because you got to have mastery of the game of life. That's why people like the money or you know, the good looks or whatever. There's a winning of the game of life that's conveyed with that. But it is a surrogate, meaning it's a proxy. It's not the exact thing. The winning at life is this internal, the true, pure being, the vibe that you carry, which you can fool people, but you can't fool the universe, because you are the universe, and you know, you might be fooling yourself, but there's somebody you're not fooling. And I tell you what, if you fool everybody, then that's the truth. Then you're not fooling anybody, actually. And then some people, especially normies, make the mistake of most people think that you're fooling. So that means you're just duping the minority. No, just realize that the smartest people in a population are the minority. The geniuses are a minority. The artists are the minority. The successful people are the minority. The minority actually, I mean, it's not always the minority, because also the bums are a minority. And there's tons and tons of minorities, infinite. You could dissect the population into this minority, that minority. But you can't just discredit what's good, what's right, what's successful, what's winning, just because the majority don't like it. Especially now, if we're talking about like relationships between how men and women interact. I mean, you just look out there, everybody's miserable. Everybody, it's an epidemic. You know, the epidemic was not a virus. The epidemic is the mindset of people that, you know, has them living together or relating with each other the way that they do. All right. We got Paco from DL, now called Midday Gospel, MG. What's up, Zay, Eugene? Lots of people in the hizzy. Dang, lots of people showing up. Let's see who's consistent here. Does that spark anything for anybody? Any questions, comments, ideas? Just type it out, share it. We're wrapping this up. Short episode. People watching on all sorts of platforms. I've covered a lot of things. You know, emphasizing really starting at the end. I kind of broke that down a little bit. You know, keeping it a free public podcast. Don't think we can't go deeper. That's what Silent Flute is for. That's what the camps are for, and the open gatherings. Even in the open gatherings, I hold back. You know, when we do our beginner camp, which is still advanced. I mean, it's more advanced than Midday Gospel, but it's less advanced than the advanced camp. Then that's really where I can unleash, you know, and give to the people that want to know, that want to learn this process. Okay, so we could end it. If you catch this recording, description, links are there. You know, follow the show. There's a bunch of guys on that are in IMC Nation that you guys should have more questions. Really should be. Like, if you really want to get this, I don't know where you're at in your consciousness and your studentship. And I can tell you, I have been a good student, very good student of several subjects, including physical subjects. I mean, I was a great Boy Scout. I was great. You don't know how to measure that. Maybe some of you do, but I was a great Boy Scout. I was a great wrestler. I was a great scholar of environmental science. So on. I could say there's more things. I mean, should I keep going? And you're doing good by showing up. You're doing good by immersing yourself in the information and just absorbing. You'll get more as you participate, as you put in, as you think inquisitively, curiously, and without shame, shamelessly. Ask those questions, get perspectives, look at your life and seek outside advice. Doesn't mean you got to take it. But this will help you think in the realm of possibilities. Look outside of yourself. Look at yourself. What would somebody suggest? What would you be curious about? How do you do the movement that you want to do? So that you can make quantum leaps ahead through communication. Take advantage of my imagination and knowledge and experience, and I transfer it to you, and it skips you out of your timeline, out of your reality, into a new one, because you have now a different thought that you take different actions and your whole life changes. And it's not because I'm great, it's just an accumulation of experience that's in this hard drive, in this software, that I can transfer to you, and I want to, because you're here and you're part of this. Oh, so right then a comment comes in. I've been working on becoming more light lately. Do you think men become more light as they embrace their masculinity, and women when they embrace femininity? I mean, I would say yeah, but it's the masculinity and the femininity is going to be so polluted with these other ideas that may not be masculinity and femininity. And so in a pure sense, the masculinity and femininity, it's always contextual. And, when you have that beingness, then there's also behaviors that go with that, and context in life that you find yourself in. Like femininity would not find herself in certain environments, and masculinity would not find himself in certain environments. In the context where you are, wherever you live and what you're doing. So I think from that certainty of how to be, that aligns with your disposition, your genetics, and just what you got going on. If you have ideas about yourself and behaviors that align with you being feminine or masculine, and that's what feeds you, and you get energy from that, having certainty about that will give you definitely sort of thrust and energy and enthusiasm, because you have certainty. And then as far as being lighthearted or light, I think indirectly is the answer, not directly, because indirectly, if you are acting with certainty and how to be and in the right places, and you're aligned with your values, then many things will happen. Like you'll really start to value that beingness, and you'll discourage and kind of resent anything that takes away from that vibe and that beingness. And so you'll start to remove things antagonistic to your vibe, which will help you be more lighthearted, because it's those suppressive elements that you may not recognize as being suppressive, but they're suppressing your goodness, they're suppressing your beingness, and that's weighing you down. That's like another way of saying suppress. There's another thought with that. The lightness comes from yes, I could see. So that combined with awareness, we could call it ego, or a little identity that's enforcing its way, imposing what it thinks is right, taking offense to things that it doesn't agree with, and that's weighing you down. It's an ego thing. But if you just let go of ego and nothing gets to you or whatever, but you're not in this masculinity or femininity, pretty soon the world is going to violate you, and there's something in you that's not necessarily ego. We could call it maybe genetic ego, but it's not ego in that kind of toxic sense of things. Ego is necessary for survival, and it's a mechanism to survive better. But this sense of confinement, or a little smaller identity that takes such offense or takes it personal when how things go, externalizes what shouldn't be external. Like if it's not in your control, you shouldn't be attaching yourself to it. That's the ego that's doing that. It's a mental thing, mental phenomenon that keeps you wrapped up in the matrix. And if you just let go of all that, but don't have alignment with masculinity or femininity, wrong behaviors, but you're just not egotistical about it, eventually you may adapt and adjust through trial and error to be more congruent with your beingness. But there's going to be a lot of bruises that happen in the way, and it's real idealistic. Like it's not, that's how traumas happen. That's where you'll get abused or used or in ways that it's going to be pretty impossible to be ego free. Traumas are ego. That is impressed on the ego, and it fixes it there through the intensity of the experience. But it's an ego thing. It's not just being a victim or not. That's egotistical. Depression is egotistical. Sadness is egotistical. And just the same way, if you just have this masculinity, femininity, but you haven't learned to identify that you have a little identity that's just kind of making rigid, making solid things that shouldn't be solid, then your masculinity and femininity, you become fixed in it. It's going to be very difficult to adapt. And it's, again, idealistic. How will you be? You'll eventually, if you're masculine or feminine now, pretty soon you won't be, because the rigidness that you hold to your ideas will make it so that you're not behaving in certain contexts. You need to be able to adjust. And you will by trial and error, but it's going to, you're going to compromise yourself at some points, and it'll dissipate some of that. So you need both. You need awareness of the duality, the gender roles, and you need the spiritual awareness of a higher way of being, that none of these things are really real. My life is not really real. It's a story to me. It's a pattern of behaviors and interactions. It's even my own name. It's a pattern of what I've said to myself, my past, my history. Like, it's a pattern. And so it's not really real. It's an illusion that will dissipate when I die, unless it just like carries on in the memes of other people. Like my life is, if I had a lot of students or whatever, that's like what happens. They sit around the teacher when he dies, and then they learn about how to die by the guy is teaching until the last moment. And then they carry that on to their students. And that's what the power of lineage is. So it's both of these things: awareness and certainty of the masculine, feminine, and then awareness of this spiritual higher realm of being that sees it all as this illusion and this matrix. And combined, I think, in an aesthetic way. Now, aesthetics is really just a default. We've learned how to not be aesthetic by our rigid ways of thinking and systems of thinking. So if we can let go and sense and rehabituate to this intuitive feeling, while having masculinity, femininity, and a kind of spiritual transcendence awareness, all three of these. And that's kind of that's like a lot. So that's where the practice comes in. This is where the study and having a process, the wake up, the lockdown, the curtains up, the different routines, and then the mentality of why am I approaching my life this way? Because if you just do it, then it's just like training an animal, and pretty soon you resent it because you don't know why you're doing it. So, but you need the why. You can't just have the why and not do it, because there's no effect. I went through yoga yesterday for 90 minutes, and I came home and I was like, man, I just accumulated so much life experience, because I ran through so many mental thoughts, mind memories, all kinds of imaginings, so many situations, not to mention the interactions before and after, but just the 90 minutes of the yoga was like, dude, I feel like I lived so much. And if I hadn't done that exercise that day, what would I have missed out on living? I would have had some living experiences, but it wouldn't have been that much experience. I felt like I experienced so much. So, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so the experience brings with it a wisdom that you can't just read about the yoga and get that experience. But if you just do the yoga and never read about it or research it or be taught something outside of just doing it, well, the experience is just going to drudge along like a worm going through the soil. Like, it's going to keep going. You're going to get better, but man, what if you could just pick up the worm and put it forward? It would get a lot further faster, just because that's what a book will do, or some teaching or something. So this lifestyle, this and that, and that's what I have to say on that. So thanks everybody for tuning in, joining, and I'll see you guys on the next Enlightened Masculinity, definitely every Wednesday, 9 a.m. Pacific, or sometimes there's like impromptu podcast episodes. So join the Telegram group. That's all in the description for, when this gets posted, or DM me on social media. Okay. See you, everybody. Jay Guru Dev. Post.